All right. So here we are again, another installment of whoever is listening or not listening. This, as I said before, is purely for us and our own education and our own empowerment and knowledge. So this is really just because I like talking to people and especially interesting people. And on this installment, I'm talking to one of the more interesting guys I've had the pleasure of meeting. Uh, Mr. Actually, I'll take it back. Dr. Keith McLaughlin, right? Just started his practice out in old Tucson, Arizona, one of my older stomping grounds, um, and where my parents actually live about 3 hours west of you.
Yeah.
So, Keith, kind of start us off. Introduction of yourself and how it's going right now in practice and life. You have the
Yeah.
floor, man.
Yeah. So let's see. So I just started my practice 3 months ago. I just finished up month three. Speaking of which, we had a conversation. I did just go over profit. So I did make a little bit of money this month, but we're starting to hit that turning point.
Congratulations.
So
Congratulations.
I'm
That's
like,
awesome.
I'm super excited for it. And
That's
a lot of that's
incredible.
honestly, a lot of that is thanks to Bloom because he did have me get that free month of review wave last month, which is awesome.
Mhm.
But yeah, no, it's going fantastic. What's amazing is the biggest thing I've learned is I was going too fast. I was really in a rush, that's been my biggest like learning point right now where I'm at, just in practice and everything, is I was such in a rush, like, oh, I need to be here, I need to be here, I need to be here. And then I learned really quickly, like, you know what? I don't have to be there. I've rushed for pretty much the whole start of my life. I mean, I popped out and I had my doctorate at 23 years old. And there is definitely an increasing amount of that. You see that in chiropractic school now. But I realized I was like, wow, I really rushed through school. And I'm glad I did it. But I'm like, now I don't have to rush. Like, there's no need. So now I'm focusing, like we had the conversation the other day, more on quality, a lot more on quality. Um, yeah. Is there anything else you want me to share on that right
No,
now?
that's
Just
awesome.
as, yeah.
I'll keep
Um,
going. How did you? Well, let's start here. How did your chiropractic journey begin?
yeah, I always love telling this story. I love telling this one. I always say I've been adjusted since before I was born. So I started with Best Chiropractic, which is bioenergetic synchronization technique. This is a technique started by Mortar, and it was my original interest. I actually used the technique for 2 years before I actually got into school. I was just testing out. I was so curious and so experimental with my mind. I just wanted to try it and work with people. I actually had a success story before I even got into school. That was actually a really funny story. But yeah, so I've been pretty much adjusting my whole life. Back in sophomore year in high school, our teacher in writing class was like, okay, write about anything you want. You're going to give a presentation on it. I'm like, oh crap. Like, I'm so used to school where they're like, okay, you're going to write a persuasive essay on this and this specific, and all this stuff. And this is the first time where they're like, write about what you want. And I was like, crap, I don't know what to write about. Right. So I go in and I'm just going through ideas. My mom's like, why don't you write about chiropractic? I'm like, I don't know. She's like, well, you've been adjusted your whole life. It's something unique and nobody else does. I'm like, okay, what the heck, So I start doing my little bit of research, right? So I look up the Mortar page and looked up Best and everything. And I start listening to these stories, and there's like this guy, there's a guy that's like, oh yeah, I hurt my ankle like 8 years ago, and it's always been a problem. And he's like, well, you just been adjusted, so how do you feel right now? He's like, oh yeah, it doesn't hurt at all. I'm like, wait a minute, so this guy's been in pain in his ankle for the past 8 years, and all of a sudden it's not hurting from one adjustment. I'm like, and it wasn't just that one guy, like it was testimony after testimony of people saying the same exact thing. And I was like, this is really weird. Like, this doesn't make sense. And so that's where my brain started ticking, and I was like, okay, this is what's going on here, right? And so I started producing chiropractic further, this natural healing art, got really interested, and I already knew I loved the human body. And then I went to Parker, my chiropractor, right, Walter Parrish, Andre the Giant, first year at Parker, which was really amazing. I love that connection. I never really realized it until I started going through school. Fast forward, I started at Parker, discovered network, had some crazy freaking experiences throughout the whole thing, and just kept getting more curious and kept pursuing my interests, and that's where we've kind of ended up here. But yeah, that's kind of the short, fast, and dirty version of it.
Yeah, I like that. What's interesting is because when we first met in school,
Mhm.
there was we were both kind of into philosophy, right? But we both got into the same kind of, how would you say, the same kind of field, talking about philosophy. And
Yes.
I think that's something that we both very much hold really dear to our hearts, is that we understand that there's a basis behind all that there is in the world, and how we view it through our own perspective. So I think that one of the biggest uh, interactions that I've had with you in early on in school, anyways, was whenever we were in Try One chiropractic philosophy class, and Dr. Russell was talking about the ins and outs of whatever chiropractic is, this crazy world of chiropractic and its philosophy. And the entire time, I could sense, because you sat right in front of me, front row, and I sat right behind you, and I could sense the entire time that you were just super, super into it. And I don't know if you could sense it from me, but I was into disliking it as much as I could. Uh,
Yeah.
and I had my reasons for it, right?
Yeah.
Because I came into school mechanistically thinking, thinking everything was like, yes, be analyzed. And then from this
Mhm.
analyzation, this observation that's miniature, you can extrapolate it out and theorize as to how the world is actually working, right? The inner
Mhm.
workings of the universe. And that's how you extrapolate it. That's the only way to look at it through that one lens. So whenever I had to go through his class, I had a really tough time. And the entire time it was kind of negative thinking towards the philosophy of chiropractic, which is much different. Um, how would you say, like, do you remember those days
Yeah.
of like those
Yeah.
interactions and stuff?
And I didn't think I really, I was very optimistic, especially like I'm now becoming more. I don't know if realism is a better term for it, but I was very like optimistic, like the world is great and everything's happy and everybody loves everybody type of thing. I don't know why my mind's so like no matter what, I struggle to see things like ego, people's arrogance, people's dislike, or things like that. It just have that nature. And I don't know why, but I just couldn't view it. So at the time I didn't realize it, and then I remember back in like try 5 when you started talking about that more of you just started talking about how you're just like, oh, you just hate it so much. And as you started talking about it later, I started realizing, holy crap, yeah, he, distaste for it. I didn't sense it as much at the time. I was just always curious. Like I never formed a perspective. I just wanted to stimulate my mind. Like I was more always on the stimulation of it. And I think one thing that hit me so hard, especially with both you and John, which I absolutely love, is that you're willing to go to the absolute depths of a subject. Like you never went superficial, which I like. That made me so happy that there's another person on this planet that wasn't just like the superficial bullshit and actually like wanted to know the truth and what was the actual thing, and not, you know, this is kind of okay, this is good enough, half-assed information. No, like what is the actual thing, type of thing. And I think I still remember when you gave the presentation and was it Spa Club on perception. I absolutely love that. I absolutely love that because
Oh yeah.
come to the conclusion of it's all about perception. And it really is. It's like you do a scientific, or Christopher Kent put it best, right? He asked the question, well, if you don't accept this research, then what research will you accept? And then we can go to something like Reggie Gold's Triune of Life. He talks about how you can't convince anybody of anything. They have to convince themselves. So perception is huge. So you really got to pay attention to perception. And that's not a concept like that is such a foreign concept in our culture nowadays. So finding somebody else, much like yourself and John, and I was just like, oh, and even Kyle, like you guys actually had this perspective of reality, and you're willing to go deeper and look more for truth,
Mhm.
and that incessant desire was what excited me about just being in your guys' presence and learning more from you. But yeah, it was a fun time. It was a lot of fun time. I'll be 100% honest with you. I said this before and I'll say it again. I mean, I look up to both of you guys, like my older brothers, honestly, because I always felt like I was always learning from you and always chasing after you guys.
And that's crazy because I've told other people too. Like I've never I never thought of myself as like someone to like I've always wanted aspire myself to be like a role model, you know, someone that people could look up to. But the only reason for that was because like I just wanted people to kind of follow on my same path where I didn't want to like persuade anybody of like this is how to do it, but I
Mhm.
always wanted to just question and have people think. Like that was like that's like the biggest thing that always frustrates me is people that aren't willing to think, like even think like an extra step, you know? I think one of the biggest lectures that was pretty influential for me, even if I didn't fully accept it, was in Try One when we were talking about salutogenesis, right? And the
Mhm.
concept of like where does health actually originate from, you know? And
Mhm.
the paradigms of like what the medical establishment is teaching is teaching and what chiropractic actually is. So when you start talking about like what is health, like you start thinking about what is health, like is it something that's like a something you attain from the
Mhm.
outside, or is it something that's like a that's completely separate from that yet not, and you start diving more into that, like what is health, and you start thinking about like how it relates to chiropractic, and and you look into the
Yeah.
principles of chiropractic, all 33 of them, and you start to realize health isn't in any single one of those principles, right? Yeah, we talk
Mhm.
about health all the time, but what is health? Health is like wholeness. If you look at the dictionary,
Yeah.
you look it up, it's wholeness. Why are you
Yeah.
trying to establish, you know, health is like you got a big,
Yeah.
healthy body, you're taking nutrition, you're working out every day. That's what health is. Like, is that what health is? You know, so you start to really think deeper into the third, fourth,
Yeah.
fifth levels and how it's all
Yeah.
connected. And you start to realize that it's a wholeness and what are you doing to complete that wholeness? So I think that one lecture, especially, I think after that, I had a great conversation with y'all about like about health and what it truly meant to be healthy and how it relates back to chiropractic. Because back then I was still thinking of it mechanistically, where it's like, but I wasn't even thinking about it like it's pain free. I was trying to relate it back into like neurology, you know, where
Yep.
it's like if every sort of circuit in your body is functioning properly, then that's what health should be, right? And at that point, it wasn't even about the pain model anymore. So it was just
Yeah.
interesting to see that, like, even if I was thinking about it mechanistically,
Yeah.
like the seeds were there. I just needed to
Yeah.
dive even deeper and
Yeah.
be more accepting of like of another paradigm.
Yeah. You started to create that whole new model in your mind of like, and that's, I mean, that's a huge like just problem in general is a lot of people try to take that chiropractic model and they're like, oh, I understand it, but then they try to put it into a medical mind frame and don't realize it's a completely separate model. It's completely different and it has a completely different functionality of how it's looking at health. You know, it's completely opposing ideology. I mean, it's completely different. So it's really interesting to see that process of someone who comes in with said beliefs, right? You know, I just started reading. I'm surprised I haven't read it yet, but Donnie Epstein's Healing Myths book. It's really
Great.
interesting how he's talking about it because he's diving deep into belief system. And I'm like,
Mhm.
shoot, I feel like I'm reading Mortar's books again. That's all Mortar talked about. It's all in your beliefs. It's all in your beliefs. You know, even you can even see that essence in Parker, um, a lot of Parker stuff. Um, but it's interesting reading the belief system. He's like, you're coming from this belief system and you have this lens and this paradigm that you're sitting on, you know, and he's like, it's time to change it and start looking at it differently. And that's such a huge turning point and it changes the way you live your life. Like it really does. And it makes me think about, this is something I'm working with my parents on. Hardest people to work on are your parents, right? But uh,
100%.
I'm working with my parents right now, and I keep, pushing my dad. I've said it about 6 times a day to my dad. I'm like, where your intention goes, your energy goes. Wherever you put your focus. So the same thing goes for health. The same thing goes for your life. So if you keep focusing on all these negative things that are happening in your life, you're giving energy to it. You keep focusing on it, give energy to it, it's going to start expressing itself more, right? Because that's all you're focusing on. I said focus on the positive aspects of it. See how you can enhance those, make those better, and make them so great that the negative stuff just pretty much falls by the wayside. You
Yeah.
know, the same thing goes for your perspective. If you purely focus on disease, you'll never be able to heal somebody, because the focus of disease will yet create more disease, because you're putting energy towards disease, and it'll just
Mhm.
keep perpetuating that, right? So
Mhm.
instead, we have to start focusing on the positive side of the coin, which was the opposite of that, which we're saying about health, the expression of health in life, right? Very beautiful
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, it definitely is. And that's a beauty of chiropractic, right? And in the end, there was a at some point in time, you can argue as to like when it happened, but people started compartmentalize every little aspect of their lives and thought that they needed to take their physical ills and ailments to the physician, right, to the medical doctor, and they needed to take their other aspects of life, like their spirituality, their mentality, um, and take it to someone else, the theologian or like a psychologist or something like that. But in reality, if you really think about it, think about the times when you have had like a chronic disease. Probably, you're healthy as hell, so you probably never, like, this probably never happened to you, but some maybe you
Yeah,
had. But think about someone where like they've had a nagging chronic issue for years and years and years and years, and they've had the medical doctor look at it, and they tell them like, oh, you need this, and that'll decrease whatever. It'll either stimulate or inhibit something in your body, and you won't feel it anymore, right? Is that the point of health, right? And then the person finally gives up and understand that there is a truth. And that's what's kind of funny about people innately know that there's something different, right? That there's something better, and that something's missing. And then they come to you, they come to me, they come to any innate driven chiropractor, and they hear the truth. And the truth is that it's all intertwined together, right? And the moment that finally clicks in their head, that positive thoughts, positive habits, positive affirmations not only are something that's for the mental aspect of their lives, spiritual aspect of their lives, but in the end, it begins to make an effect physically in their lives, right? So once that finally changes, like that's all we do as chiropractors. You read the book Power versus Force, right?
yeah. I actually haven't finished it, but I started
Okay.
reading it, and
It's it
it amazed me that right off the bat he started talking about AK, and I was like,
yeah.
I was like, what?
So
It's like
and
it's
that's what's
cool.
interesting, because like in when he was talking about some of those applied kinesiology, and also talking about some of the muscular behaviors that actually occur in the body when you start to finally become physically aware of yourself, and just like past to just like the physical aspect of pain. um, your body is the one that innately drives you and tells you what's wrong, right? But in the book, the reason I mentioned it was because the one of the best examples of what we do comes from the book, and he talks about chiropractic in his profession. Think of it as like I'm gonna, if people don't know what attractors are, you know what an attractor is, but we'll break it down for anyone that doesn't know what it is, especially a strange attractor, which is even more fascinating. But
Yes.
think of it as a pendulum. Your life as a pendulum, right? And sometimes you'll swing over here to the left, sometimes it will swing over here to the right. And it's not until the chiropractor comes in and tells you, this is who you are, this is who you're meant to be, this is where you should be, can you get there? And until that finally clicks with the patient, they become centered again to where they need to be, right? Because all of health is just a spectrum of what that entails. So
Yeah.
um uh so the reason I mentioned that book is because it has such a beautiful insight as to what we do as chiropractors. We don't go over here and just plunk backs into place. What we really do is we try and change the person's life, and we notice what's inside, and we notice the actual the actual oscillation that's supposed to be expressed through the patient. And we tell them, this is the vibratory pattern you need to be in. Can you be here? And can you be stable in this, right? And that's when you see, and once they agree to that, there needs to be an agreement, and it needs to be an agreement through the patient, the other side. Once that's agreed upon, what happens? Changes happen, right? And that's when when magic happens. Exactly. So
Yeah.
that's what I love about chiropractic, and that's why I love that book.
Yeah, your wording was very perfect. Talking about oscillation and vibration. And I love the term. Have you heard the terminology allostasis?
Yes.
Yeah. So you have homeostasis, right? So homeostatic, okay, we have a set point. Your body temperature should be 98.6 degrees, always, no matter what, type of thing. It's always that set thing versus allostasis is a little bit more malleable model of, okay, depending on where your position is at, what's going on in the environment, that homeostatic set point could be different, right?
Mm-hmm.
So very often, and even Sue Brown, this is what I learned from Sue Brown's papers, the strange attractor is set at a different point in time, right? So it's like your body doesn't realize where everything should be set around. It doesn't know where that set point is because there's miscommunication. Very simply, right? But when the communication comes back, it says, oh, my set point's supposed to be here. And so it finds its point back to there. Now, life is still an oscillating process. It still moves around. It's still a dynamic model, but there's a set point in time, like I should say time and space, but there's a set point of the physiology and the functionality of everything that it needs to be functioning at, right? And I always make this, I actually speak to my patients about this all the time. I say, does it make sense that you should have high blood pressure when you're sitting on the couch? Well, no. What about if you're running a marathon? I'll say, well, that doesn't make sense. And sometimes I'll explain it they'll be like, well, cardiovascular system's your energy system. That's how you get nutrients around the body. So if I need more nutrients, what do? Well, I got to get around faster. Let's increase the blood pressure, right? So the problem isn't high blood pressure. The problem is the timing of the high blood pressure. That's the real issue, right? And I've mostly learned this from Mortar, just reading Mortar's book, because he put it really well. Because the issue is like once you make that connection back, the body realizes the timing. Oh, I'm not in a car accident that I had 10 years ago. Oh, I'm not running a marathon. Oh, I'm not in that injury state. And then it makes the correction. And it goes back to that natural oscillatory state where it needs to be in life, right? Now we can also use, we could go way more in depth in looking at the autonomic nervous system. The autonomic nervous system is a natural state of oscillation of going sympathetic, parasympathetic, sympathetic, parasympathetic. And we expect you to be in both. It's very common that people are like, well, sympathetic's bad. Well, if there's a tiger in the room, you might want to just shut up your sympathetic system to get away from that tiger. It's probably be a good thing, and if you're trying to go to bed, you probably want your parasympathetic to shoot way up, right? So you're able to actually fall asleep, and actually allow that repair to happen. So the issue, again, isn't necessarily which one and should we be in one or the other, is we want to find a nice balance point for the two. That's why you take HRV in my office, and I'm sure you'll do the same, is that's the whole point. That's another sign of the oscillation of life occurring, this back and forth, to and fro, yin and yang, and pull and twist and turn, to make sure that the activity produced, the energy produced by that pulling action, is the creation of life. And we got to make sure that that's in proper proportions.
Exactly. And the way I always like to visualize it too, actually I just came up with this analogy, but I really like it, is like the rheostat effect, right? Or even like a dimmer switch, and how it's connected to the same thing. Like telling someone that their back pain or their high blood pressure or other physical presentation of how they're presenting at that time is negative, is like telling someone that, you walk into a room and it's daytime outside, but there's light inside your room, right? Is the light actually bad or is the light actually good? You don't know. The only person that actually knows that is yourself, your self-expression, your innate, right? The inborn wisdom that's inside you that actually knows if it's good or if it's bad, if it should be turned on, it should be dimmed down a little more, maybe it needs to be more lit up, right? So in the end, all we do is make the patient self-aware of themselves. That way, there's a connection between themselves and the dimmer switch or the rheostat, and that way it can control itself, right?
Yeah.
So to tell someone that, oh, there's no light in the room, that's bad, or there's a lot of light in the room, that's really bad. That's not, that you're looking at it at the most superficial level, and you're incorrect, right? You have
Yeah.
no
Yeah.
authority. You have no authority, and you have literally nothing to base it off of, that that's actually a good thing, right? So
Yeah.
that's actually something that
Yeah.
we as principal chiropractors love to talk about, is pain, right? We always like to tell
Yeah.
people, it's kind of, I mean, you have these conversations all the time with people. It's like they come in your office and they're like, hey, I have a lot of pain going on, it's really bad, can you get rid of it? And you're like, okay, let's talk
Yeah.
about this. Is pain bad, right? If I
Yeah.
have my stove, if I turn on the
Yeah.
stove and I put my hand on the stove and I just leave it there, you're gonna start to, you're gonna, I really hope I
Can't
have
feel
pain
pain.
before, exactly, I really hope I have pain before
Like, is
before
something
I
cooking?
yeah, exactly, before I smell something cooking. And that's when I want to have, that pain, so it's like, pain isn't
Yeah.
bad. So
Yeah.
you need to have those conversations with people and tell them, like, that there's an empowerment. You need to start empowering them and telling them, look, you do not have to be afraid of your body. Your body is intelligent. It's got all this innate wisdom inside of it. It knows what to do. The only thing that's going on is there's a miscommunication between you, the brain, and the rest of the body. That's the issue. Where's the issue? I know how to help you. I know where the issue is, and then you go from there. But
Yeah.
that's really like the message of, that's like our mission in our office is all about empowerment. Like,
Yeah.
our mission statement is empowering you through holistic health, upper cervical care, and technology, right? Because in
Yeah.
the end, the message is first and foremost empowerment. And then after that, it's all about telling the patient, look, you can do this without, I'm the first step. I help you recognize yourself.
Mhm.
The second step is you noticing that, taking hold of that. And then the third step is you already know and you're certain of it, because we have technology to back that up and research to back that up, and you don't ever have to question yourself on your self-empowerment. So that's why I love
Uh,
that concept so much.
and that's so powerful to sit with someone and say, I know you're gonna get better. You're gonna get better. That's, and I always tell people that. I say, I have a bunch of fancy equipment. I know you probably don't fully understand all the technical stuff on it and all the specifics on it. But I said the reason I take all this is because I want to give you a guarantee. I want to let you know that your health is going to improve in this office. The healing ability, that connection to the brain and body is going to improve. And I know that it's improving. Not, well, our leg check came up good today, so that's good. Like, so I think you're getting better. No, I want to say, oh yeah, you're definitely getting better. And not to crush down on leg checks, but it's not just one thing. I use leg checks all the time in my office, and I do it for different reasons. I use a ton of different stuff, but you got to get this conglomerate of pictures. If you go paint a picture, you're not using one color. I mean, you can, and there's unique styles of doing that. That's doable. It's possible. But when you put all the colors, you want to get an array of colors and get a whole chromograph, I guess it's called, or whatever the name is for it. But you want to get all those colors in there. You want to create the whole picture. And, my biggest thing is, like, in my office, see, I'm a little different from you in this, is I realize that I value quality a lot. So I'm okay with sacrificing numbers for higher quality. That's kind of my mindset when I'm approaching. Now, does that mean I lose quantity? No, I'm going to try to hit my highest level of quantity as best I can, right? But my focus is on really, really high quality. And for me, my pacing is set different. So I'm okay with spending time with sitting and looking at people's intake. Like, I literally sit over and look at people's intakes multiple times. And I try to absorb the person in front of me. I'm like, who is this person? What are they coming in with? What's their, and I even go to, like, spirituality, their mindset. What type of experiences have they had in their life? What type of ailments? How those ailments been affecting their life overall? What's their quality of life? I try to get this whole picture of this person and this existence and this being in front of me, because my mindset is, what other doctor has done that for them? You know, they've looked in and they've gone meticulously, and they go into this rote cookie cutter cookie cutter cookie cutter, again, I'm saying it right, cookie cutter method of algorithm after algorithm. You have A and you have B, so we do diagnostic test C to prove that you have D. Okay, yeah, that's a component, but there's a real human being in front of you. Like, there's a real person in front of you that's saying, I hurt, I want my life back, how can you help me? And being able to sit in that space and actually have that real moment with somebody and have that experience with them. I've had conversations with people. I say, what do you think it is? They're like, honestly, I think it's my emotions. I think I'm stressed out as hell. Like, okay, cool. Let's work with that. Let's work from there. And when was the last time a doctor asked a patient, what do you think it is? And it's like, I'm not, and ultimately the answer is with the patient. That's a book called How Doctors Think, right? It is designed for MDs, but I absolutely love that book. I recommend every chiropractic student, practitioner, anybody to read that book, because basically the guy sat down and said, what do MDs F up most on when they're trying to diagnose? What's the biggest fatal flaws, right? And so he goes to these flawed logic and this flawed thinking of diagnosis in this process. And he talks about all the specific things of just assumptions, and once you pick things, you'll stick to them, and you'll aggressively like say, oh no, that's definitely the diagnosis, and we got to stick with it, even though they might be proven wrong later. He even talked to something as specific as the importance of X-rays and going through your systems, right? He talked about this guy who he gets a chest X-ray, right? And he said, this man's a chronic alcoholic and he has a thiamine deficiency. And the MD's like, what? How did you tell that from an X-ray? And he said, well, you see these marks along the rib cage. He's like, these are from repetitive fractures. He said, these are repetitive fractures of falling. He said, this guy's an alcoholic and he falls a lot from his alcoholism, and a chronic, consistent cause of alcoholism is a thiamine deficiency. He said, that's why he's presenting with the symptoms. This guy looked back at an X-ray and he was able to figure all that out. And sure enough, that's exactly what it was. They went through to the specific diagnostic tech, but it's so amazing to see that process going in, and really changing it from experience. We're getting so much into a modern world of corporatization and making everything so like streamlined, and how can we make money and and speed and efficiency are great, but when they're coming from that level of thinking and that level of knowledge, they start losing life, mm. And so there's always, and you can still obtain both. It's possible. You can obtain both. You can create an amazingly efficient business and still maintain life in it. And that's when magic is like, that's when you see stuff that people are like, how does that even exist? Like, how is that possible? And they're like, sure enough, they created it. Somebody created that. That's where the two worlds become one. I have a saying, I usually come back and say it to myself. What was it? Oh no, it was I have a few of them. It was a clear mind, a clear heart, and a clear mind brings two worlds into the divine. Yeah, that's what it was. That one I always remind myself. Having a clear heart and a clear mind brings two worlds into the divine.
Mm-hmm. I like that.
Reminding yourself of the intellectual side, the very heavy left brain, and the creative side, and the presence of being on that right side. Yeah. But yeah.
I like that, dude. I love that, because in the end, that's actually the chiropractic message you just actually extrapolated from, if you really think about it. Yeah. Which is, I love that.
You can say it 100 different ways. Mm-hmm. And all I'm talking about is life. I still love, and my favorite one is posted plastered on my website. I know you saw it, as the my favorite quote. One of my favorite ones from BJ was the medicine is the study of disease and how a man dies, and chiropractic is the study of life and how a man lives. And I love that. That's what we do. We study life. It's not just define the nervous system and reconnection. That's an important part, but what we study is just life. What's that spark that makes you get all excited and jittery when you have that experience, and it's like, having a first kiss or having sex for the first time and it's all awkward, or when you're driving a car and you're nervous or you want to step on the gas, right? It's like we have these experiences in life that are so like it's like, oh my god, this is amazing and scary and fun, or I'm pissed off, or and I've learned to love it all. It's all amazing. Sometimes I get so pissed off and then I'm just like, oh, this is so awesome that I get so angry to get to have this experience. Because I always imagine, what if I wasn't able to experience this? Wouldn't I be like almost yearning, like what would that feel like? Like what would it feel like to be severely angry if I never got to experience anger? I would be curious, and that my brain goes to like Al Watts when he talks about the concept of what if you were God. He's like, what if you were God? Like everything's figured out, everything's planned. You got omnipotence, you can do whatever you want. He said it's gonna happen every time. What's gonna happen is you're gonna get bored at some point. So you're gonna throw yourself a little surprise. Throw a little spontaneity into it. Something's gonna come around the corner, you don't see it coming. And you say, well, I kind of like that. That's kind of unfamiliar, and I didn't see that coming. And so you're gonna add a little more spontaneity to it, and a little bit more, and a little bit more, and then he's at a certain point, you're gonna end up right where we are right now.
Yeah, and that's really like the life. Like I mean, that's how every process is in life. Like healing,
Yeah,
life, everyday life is like that too. It's an adventure all in itself, right? Uh,
yeah.
this kind of reminds me of that was another book that I read. I forgot what it was called. I want to say it was about diagnosis. What was this book? I want to say it was a Bruce. I want to say it came from Bruce Lipton's book, Spontaneous Evolution. Have you read that book?
No, I haven't gotten into that one. The only one I've read is Molecule, or the Biology Belief on Molecules.
I recommend that book 100%. It's a short read.
That's right on my list.
It's a short read, but I honestly I think I love it more than his Biology Belief book.
Really?
Because in it he talks about the beginnings of science and even the origins, the evolution of the theory of evolution, and how Darwin was very much separated in how he actually took the actual theory and he actually construed it into his manner so that he would own it,
Really?
right? Yeah, so it's
Really?
pretty fascinating. But the reason I bring it up, because I think it's in this book, he talks about how in the future people always, and it's happening now, people always think that because we are so compartmentalized, corporatized, and we think algorithmically and we think that's what health is, they believe that robots are going to be able to like just judge whatever figure out whatever diagnosis you have just by a set of questions, right?
But it
Here's
won't
20 yeah, so that's what, so in the book he highlights how there's actual AI out there that's diving into the questions already, and they get the diagnosis right and wrong just about the same amount of time as a regular medical doctor does.
Wow, that's
Exactly.
fascinating.
Which is
Wow.
insane because this machine has all of the research that's recent research now, right?
Yeah,
Has all the same health history that a medical doctor has now,
yeah,
and still ends up with the same diagnosis, right? And that diagnosis is still,
yeah.
the statistic, it's like 45%, 50% of the time correct, right? So it's like, so that just
Yeah.
proves right there that
So there's
even
only
if you're
one conclusion to bring from that.
exactly.
Yeah,
So in
it's
the
the
end, like
system.
the moment you
Broken
start
system.
thinking exactly, the more you start thinking algorithmically, you are already at just 50%, right? If the person in front of you is just answers and questions, and you're not diving into the actual cause, right? The one cause, if you're not diving into that, you are not ever going to help the patient to a higher degree, right?
Yeah.
So that book is
And what about,
fascinating.
so we talked about holism a little bit. So what about the spiritual experience of humans? And I'm not necessarily no like let's cut the religious talk, but the spiritual experience of a human is, I saw God, and this has now put on philosophical implications on my life. And we can sit here and debate, oh well, they didn't see God, or it was an illusion, or there's certain chemicals in their brain. aside from that conversation, they still, the perception they experience that said thing, and it has put implications on their physiology and their life now, right?
Yeah.
And so our intention, we don't go in and we don't, mess with the spiritual realm per se, but do people have spiritual experiences, and is that poured into the healing journey? I'd say hell yeah. It's like
Yeah.
that person that takes DMT and then realize, oh my God, they finally have to face the fact that they were beaten to living hell and by their father when they're 4 years old or whatever it is, and they finally have to come to realization and reality of that, and it forces them to have that experience, right? And they grow from that. And to me, that's very much spiritual in its nature. That's very much this like inner workings of the mind and the life, and kind of that weird esoteric like soul realm of like, how can I make this empower me instead of drain the life out of me?
Yeah. And you're right.
That's the experience not talked about.
Yeah. And you're right. That's actually something that we as chiropractors don't dive into, but in a way that's something that we, that's a byproduct of the healing, right? That's a byproduct of what actually occurs.
Yeah.
Yes. It's so funny because like
and we don't work in it, but it expresses itself when we work.
Yeah.
People have those experiences when we're like, I didn't intend that to happen, but all of a sudden, they saw God and 3 angels and this and this and this, and you're like, I just adjusted them, okay? Like,
yeah,
I did not mean for that to happen.
Yeah, that's so true. But like, but it's like you said, it's that perception of it, because in the end, like I'm thinking of like a couple of people that I've helped out recently, chiropractically, and both of them, one is like super, like they're both into holistic health, right? One of them is like super into yoga, like recite your mantras, and she's all into the whole naturalistic healing and all the, one would say like woo-woo stuff, right? And the other one is like, Christian, just believes in God, still lives a holistic life. They're both super healthy, right? But because of what they have perceived in their life and the big changes that chiropractic have made in their lives, and because of those changes, mental changes that have occurred in life because of chiropractic, they've decided to go a different route, and that has added to their perception, right? And now they're on the path that they are on because of what they had perceived in the past, present, and now what they're going to be perceiving in the future, right? So you really have to think of it as like we're just like a moment in time, right? We're in this like space and time moment where even if like you can interact, like the moment you start interacting, you start affecting, right? And that makes you question, like, are you prepared to be that person that interacts, right? And what are you putting out there as well, right? So it's like, it goes back to like what you were saying before. What are you actually putting out there? Because in the end, if you're like, I always reference this study. I need to figure out where I get it from. But there's another book that I was reading that was talking about the success of back surgeries. No, it wasn't back surgery. I think it was a knee surgery.
That's a fun one. Both of those are fun ones.
Yeah, they're really fun. But I think it was knee surgery. I forgot the book. I'll have to look it up. But I want to say it was one of Deepak Chopra's books. Maybe I think it was like MetaHuman or something like that. But in the study, it was pretty interesting. The only thing that changed was the MD. The medical doctor went in and he said, this is what you got. This is what we're going to do. That was the whole diagnosis. That was the whole procedure. And there was 2 factors that changed. One was the medical doctor's interaction with the patient. The first time, the 2 separate sets was the medical doctor was more interactive. They were more loving. They did their very best. I think they even prayed.
I've heard this one. I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
And then in the other one was a callous, cold, was just about, okay, this is what you got. I'm just going to do it. And the outcomes were that then the outcomes were different. The 2 sets of outcomes were different, where in one was a placebo surgery where all they did was they opened up the skin, didn't do anything inside the knee, sewed it back up, and made him believe that there was a surgery that was done. The other one, they actually went in and did the entire like knee surgery. How was it supposed to? Guess which one was more successful through like the surgery that was done and also the placebo surgery? It was
Placebo,
always
and I would say by
yeah, it was
far,
always
and also the
yeah,
person that interacted more.
yeah, it wasn't just the placebo one. The placebo, they saw a difference between the placebo and the actual. The interesting parts was like in the end, what they found in the placebo and the actual surgery was like the outcomes were nearly the same in both. So what was that? What does that tell you? It tells you that the very mere fact that you cut someone open already enacts that belief inside in the perception and changes the neurology inside the patient, right? To think that, oh, I'm healing now, I'm good now,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
So already the success of those surgeries were higher than just the control of not doing anything.
Yeah.
The one thing that was interesting was the one doctor that was more caring, the time that he was more warm, the time he actually loved and prayed for the patient, both surgeries and even the control when they didn't even do a surgery in the first place were higher than the doctor that didn't, was just in there, did, and was callous and cold. Like, what does that tell you? You know, what does that tell you?
Yeah, your interaction with the patient is of higher priority than the actual procedure.
It's a humongous priority, and then behind that, it's like even what you do with the patient, it relies on what if they are accepting of what the intervention is, right? That's what it 100% relies on. Because even the patient felt better when there was no surgery at all done, and there was and the doctor was warm, loving, and affectionate. You know, even then they left the office and like, you know what, he didn't do anything, but I kind of feel better, you know, which is crazy.
I feel better, yeah.
I feel better.
Yeah. Beliefs are huge. Beliefs are huge. You know, and this is something I plan on. I haven't added it yet, but I want to add it to my intake form. One of the weird things I have on my intake form right now is I say, so my goal is to get you to your limitless life. And I always reference you've seen the movie Limitless, right? He pops the NCT drug and he's just like, you know, that type of thing. And he's like, I'm gonna own the stock market and do this, you know, type of thing.
Great movie.
You know, but I use that as an analogy because I talk to people and I'm like, this is literally what I felt when I started network care. I got out and I would walk out after an adjustment and I just feel like my brain just feels on. Like I just got the cheat codes to life and like I'm ready to go. So that's why I named my practice Limitless Chiropractic. And that's what I want for people. I want people to have that experience where it's like, I know it sounds really cheesy, the world is my oyster, you know, type of thing. But because I've experienced that before, I'm like, oh my God, this is real. Like, holy shit, like I can do whatever the heck I want. Like anything is humanly possible now. You really do feel that like almost invincibility. But also you start feeling like the ecstasy of life more, like you feel more. I like Eric Rubin's comment. He talked about when he worked with Donnie Epstein. He's like, I don't feel anything. I don't feel anything. And Donnie's response to it was, he's like, then feel more. Like, you got to feel more. Like, yeah, I love the like straightforward, but like simple response. But having more of that experience, feel more. So I ask people, what does your limitless life look like? Because I want to know what their goal is. Like, I'm like, this is my goal. I want to get you to your like magnus opum, right? And I say, what does that look like for you? And some people, it's super simple. I want to be able to keep moving and keep doing things I love. Awesome. I had another person say, I want to attain enlightenment. I said, awesome. Okay, cool. Let's work. You know, like let's do the work. And you know, it's all the same. We just keep our processes going. But the next question I want to add in there is, do you believe you can heal? Because I think that's a really important question to be asking every single person that comes in. Do you honestly believe you can heal? You know, because there's going to be people who have come in with diagnoses that they've been told by a doctor that this is incurable. This never heals. This doesn't da 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 da. But we already know, even Fred Barge talked about it. He's like, every single disease on this planet, there has at least been one case where it spontaneously has gone away.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing that has not gone away. Like, name it. There's a disease that literally has, at least in one form or fashion has gone away for some mysterious reason. We might not fully understand it. We might understand it, but not a single one. So the same thing, it's like having these people come in with these pre-established beliefs and addressing that right off the bat when they come in. Really like, what is your belief system right now? Do you believe that this is just a problem and you're never going to get better, and the only reason you're coming here is to maintain the problem or maintain the level it's at, you know, type of thing, right? And honestly, sometimes I'm working with some people, and honestly, sometimes I think they want to be sick, like
Yeah.
on some level that they actually desire, because it gives them a reason, it gives them an excuse, right, to be keep living at the level that they're living their life at, so they don't have to become something more, you know. It gives them an opportunity to have a scapegoat, you know. Oh, it's not me, it's my depression, it's no, it's not me, it's my sciatica, it's my sciatica, it's just acting up, you know. I can't control that, you know. I can't control that. I'm not in control in that, you know, type of thing. And that perception is really, I mean, it's kind of lost, you know. It's like, oh, that's interesting. It's like, wow, nobody told you that you can be more. And just like you're talking about empowerment, that's huge. I'm glad that you are insisting that as a, it sounds like you're insisting that as a value within your practice. Like, I want you to be empowered. No, you have the power. And I do certain things in my practice to try to establish that, like little tiny things. Like, I tell people, I say, look, this is my recommendation. You know, I'm the doc. This is my recommendation. This is what you should do for this. And I've seen this before. I've worked with this before. But at any moment, you can stop your care if you want to. I always make the joke. I'm like, if you stop liking my face, I cut my beard weird, right? I cut half of my beard off and leave half of it on. And you're just like, oh, I can't do this. And you want to leave. That's completely up to you. And the reason I do that is to inform the patient on, they have control over their care and who they pick their health care with, and so it reestablishes that power up here where it's like, at any moment you could drop me like a rock and say, nope, I'm doing my own thing, right? And it relinquishes power from me, which is, I know some people would disagree with that, but for me it follows my values and what I stand for, which is making sure that the power is always in the practice members' hands. Because when the power is in their hands, which is where the healing's at, from above down, inside out, not my hands placing on their spine is what healing them, right? When we reestablish where the power is at, then the belief can mix with the actuality, the reality, which is where the healing's at. You know, then healing can be optimized.
Yeah. That reminds me of that one
Or
also,
normalized,
Fred,
depending on how you look at it.
depending on how you look at it, yeah. That
Yeah.
also reminds me of another Fred Barch quote. There are no incurable diseases, only incurable people. It's
Yeah,
like,
no, that's really,
like
really good. That's accurate.
when people do not want to be helped, there's
Yeah.
nothing in the world that you can do. They're not going to be helped, right? And 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 that's why sometimes, like, people, the moment they start to realize that there's almost this constant fear, right? The moment they realize that there's a responsibility behind, you know, their health, their life, everything that they do in their lives, the moment they start to actually realize that, it can be like, it's a paradigm breaker, right? Because their entire lives they grew up separating themselves from their diseases, their pains, their emotions, their traumas. And we're in here telling them, guess what? All that's actually, there's a purpose for all that. And if you don't integrate that, if you don't actually understand that all those things were for a reason, then we're not going to get very far, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and it's really that important. That's why it's so important to educate people on, like, what you do and what you're not, like, because in the end, if a chiropractor was just a back pain guy, right, I could easily make money just making videos online telling people, go do these exercises. 98% of you are gonna, like, get rid of your back pain that
You
easy.
do great work and you make great money.
Yeah, like I could do
And
that
you'd help a
really
lot
easily.
of people with low back pain.
Yeah, it's like, do this for 4 or 6 weeks, do your own exercises, and you're not gonna be in pain. Pay me like $1,000 and just follow the protocol and you'll feel better. You know, it's like, yeah, sure. And that's true. Like, people do have back pain, do have arm pain, do have all these other pains. And sometimes all they want to do is to get out of that pain, right? But people have to understand that the moment they step into the chiropractic paradigm, we're not talking about pain. We're talking about, we don't tell people we're going to get rid of your pain. We tell people, hey, we understand you're in pain, but guess what? We do this. And I'm not telling you that you're going to be better. I'm not telling you that you're going to be get rid of your pain, but I am telling you that there is no more interference in your body. You're communicating from above down, inside out. There's a constant circuit of the brain body connection. And if that is in place, you have the most optimal, you're in the most optimal state to heal, to thrive, to survive, to live, all of those things, you know? And maybe your pain goes away, maybe you don't. But what actually happens is you educate them and tell, guess what? You're better off you're better off being this way and not, you know? So you make those comparisons. And you have to educate the people in doing that, because if you don't educate them on doing that, on what you're doing, they're just gonna rely on the fact that you're just another ibuprofen Pez dispenser, but all you do is you help fix them with your hands. You know, that's what they're gonna believe. So
is that you're a possibly cheaper version or a more natural version of pain relief or painkiller.
It's like
you become the human version of a painkiller.
If you really want to come to me, understand that I'm not here to do natural to do natural pain healing. If you want to do that, go find someone else to get rid of your pain. You know, that's not what I'm here for. You know.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, and but in the end, like, I think as long as you communicate that, because guess what, 90% of the time, if you focus on that, people's pain do go away, right? People's troubles do go away, right? And the byproduct of that is them being reconnected fully to who they actually are.
And that's, it's so ironic. Like, when we stop focusing on the pain, that's when the pain goes away. Like, the amount of, like, it's so like weird and peculiar, but like, you just know it. That's usually so often what happens. I was thinking of this conversation. So I had my sister's wedding. I went to San Diego, right? And I sat down with one of the groomsmen, the other groomsmen. I was talking to him a little bit about it. He's like, "Oh, I was in advertising for, I think it was L'Oreal or something like that." I'm like, "Oh, can I do my like chiropractic pitch with you?" And I was like, I said, what do you think about this? I said, "What if I could give you 20% more of your life back? Just more experience, more feeling, more just your life, everything in general. 20%, 30%, 40%, 5%. How much would you pay for that? So how much is it worth to you just to get that much more out of life?" So that's what I do. I give people life back. And he's like, "That's a pretty damn good pitch." I'm like, "Yeah." I was like, "If you ever need to be checked out, if you need a chiropractor, I'll send you one." I was like, "I'll make sure to send you a referral." So but that's the core of it. Is like, oh my gosh, getting more life into the person. And you can tell, I mean, you don't need to be an expert practitioner in chiropractic to see when someone's not living their life. Like, they're not like really getting life in, really squeezing the juice out of it, every last bit and drop out of it. You can tell when someone's subluxated. You can just feel, and it's not like a depression, but that depressive energy, I'm talking about. You're like, this person's doing the same routine every day. They feel like shit. They live like shit. They talk like shit. They eat like shit. Like, everything's just like, they just got that blank face, and even you can go into, if you want to go into like spiritual text and everything. I do a lot of studying in that realm. But they talk about like enlightenment and just in very simple terms, just like becoming self-aware. Like, how many people are not just like self-aware, like, being aware of just you? And it seems like something so simple, but the majority of our populace are functioning on, and I don't know if you saw my post for Patrick to Tempo. I posted
great
he had a new one that came up. Oh my God. It's like, um, and he's just talking on philosophy. That was like practical application of philosophy, where philosophy says. And he was talking specifically on the topic of, he said, if you don't have a defined philosophy, he's like, you always have a philosophy, it's either defined or undefined. And he referenced Rand, which I'm not sure who that is, but I want to go back and look at the reference and read the actual stuff, the paper he was referencing. But he said, if you don't have that, all you're running off of is a pain and pleasure system. Oh, you get pleasure, you're like, you know, I'll say, oh, things suck again. Oh, I got a little pleasure, and things suck again. And then after a while, it's more pain than it is pleasure. You know, and all your focus is on the pain, and every time you can get just a little ounce of pleasure or dopamine back into the brain, you get stuck into the cycle. And he was claiming that it's completely from the philosophy of how you're defining your life and where it's probably looking at. But it's amazing because people don't even have the self-awareness to sit down and have that introspective process of really sitting down and being like, is this okay with me? Am I okay with this value? Is this in line with my values? What are my values? Like, you know, like there's a scene from Rick and Morty. I love Rick and Morty. I'm sorry. It's it's a, you know, it has its moments where it's just like, oh, this is just a crappy Adult Swim. But sometimes there's like some really brilliant moments. And it is a funny scene. I always think of whenever it can be surprisingly deep at certain moments. And one of the scenes I absolutely loved because it was a really simple joke, but it was really like, oh wait, that's actually an interesting question. Is Rick pours Morty out of school, of course, right? And he says, you know, Morty, we gotta go on this, you know, type of thing. And one of the kids like, like you're getting pulled out of class and everything. And he's like, oh, wait a minute, what are my morals? Like, wait, what are my values? Type of thing. You know, it's just a quick switch around, but it's like a good question, like, oh my gosh, like what are my values? And very often people don't define what that is for themselves and provide awareness. That's what we do. Interceptive awareness. What is the disconnect between the brain and the body? It's a lack of awareness of self. So when we reconnect that, all of a sudden you're more aware of your own emotions. You're more aware of your body. It can be very physical. It can be chemical. It can be emotional. It gets more awareness within all those degrees. And all of a sudden the person is more aware. You know, before, you know, I would just kind of let this brush over my shoulders, but now I kind of don't agree with it. All of a sudden they're aware of, wait, shit, what are my morals? What are my values on this concept? What are my values on the topic? Am I okay with this? Am I not okay with this? All of a sudden, they start having bigger epistemological questions and metaphysical questions like that are natural and normative for people's bodies having. They're normative to life, but they haven't been experiencing it because of that disconnect. And whatever reason, whatever stress that is put on them, whether it be societal, parental, or what they ate, or they got in a car accident, or they're born this way, or they were C-section, or whatever it was, they went through some process that had stopped that process, and they never were able to establish those values in the first place. You know, and all of a sudden this awareness comes back in, and it's like, oh my God, now I have to decide my personality and my identity. You know, and I see that all the time because I see it in the hips. The hips are you know, usually concerned with identity when we're looking at network and different things in that analysis protocol, right? I always will tell people the foundation of your mind is seen in the foundation of your spine, right? And the foundation of your mind is your identity, how you identify. And that is the foundation that you stand on. Everything starts stemming off of. I define myself as this. So I agree with this. I don't agree with this, right? And it expresses itself physically. There'll be distortion in the foundation of our spine. You start seeing the sacrum do this, the coccyx do that, right? The lumbar will start degrading. There'll be degeneration processes in the L5, L4 disc. You know, you'll see all that stuff start going on. You know, they'll pull their hamstring more often because there's tension in the sacrum now that leads down sacrotuberous, which is now pulling on medial hamstring. You know, I say, no, you have tight calves. You know, no, it's a holistic process. Everything distorts, everything shifts around this one premise, whether it be emotional or they've been on car accidents. It could be simple or it could be the complex simple. You know.
Yeah, that reminds me of something I've talked about before. Either with John or someone else, but the whole body, I really think of as like think of it as just like this physical vehicle, right? It's almost like a car, right? And over time, you have a brand new car, and naturally it will degenerate because everything has a lifespan, right? So when you're born, you have, you're born 280 days later after your inception, after your conception, and you have, the neural tube that is perfectly intact. And if there's no sort of congenital abnormalities, what tends to happen is you should be expressing fully within that if there's no subluxation when you're born. What are those? What are those expressions? They're expressing itself through the innate forces, the communication that's actually coming in, the informative, constructive communication is coming in from above, down, inside out, and it'll resonate through the entire body, right? The resonance through that entire body will actually be at a state or frequency that is we call normative for most people. Now, because we're all the conglomerate of our ancestors and our mom and dad and their genetics too, when we actually express ourselves, we're expressing ourselves through that lens, through that physical lens.
Yeah.
So over time, what sort of experience really deeply affects me, my nervous system, will not affect you the same way. So the resonance will be different throughout whatever experience happens. And then over time, that means, and then at that state in time, let's say you're a baby and you experience that, you're going to express that physically in a different state of matter. So meaning that you'll express that on the physical plane through some sort of thing that we view as like, a short leg, there's torticollis, there's something going on, right? There's
Or even
crying, there's
personality could be different.
personality changes, and then and that doesn't ever change. The only thing that changes, like that doesn't ever change, the subluxation, primary subluxation that occurs doesn't ever change that. What actually changes is the matter itself, because as the matter tends to grow, progress over time, you lengthen, you get bigger, you get stronger, and you have neural development. However, the matter itself changes because of the experiences in itself. And then over time, you start to express through that same physical tube slash car. And in the end, those same forces that are being applied to you are still being expressed. And it's still the same frequency, except now those physical experiences are actually being expressed at a different degree, or they're expressed differently, right? So then you have experiences that cause you mental trauma, or they cause psychological trauma, or they cause you to have leg pain, or guess what? Your family is more prone because you have that already have the ancestral bond because of the cells. You have maybe congenital issues over time, right? And then over time, as your body starts to deteriorate, because that's the natural state of our body, what tends to happen is we keep expressing those physical experiences and they just look different over time, right? But it's the same resonance throughout the cells. The only thing that's different though is the actual matter in itself that changes, and not the frequency, right? So that's what I think is so fascinating, because if you look into like Jay Holder, or even Epstein's work, Tolsky's work, when they talk about resonance, they talk about frequency. You start to see that the actual nervous system is a resonance. Think of it as like a tuning fork, right? The actual hertz that is actually being put out of the nervous system, which is the transmitter between the generator that is the brain to the rest of the cells, which are the receptors. The reason they call it the receptors, the secondary version of that is because they are receiving that tone and expressing it through the specialization of those cells, of themselves. So in the end, what tends to happen is, are those physical experiences are the only thing that change because those cells have changed? You know what I mean? But that subluxation, that primary subluxation, the one thing that separates you from spirit and physical man, is still there. And as long as you don't get to that, it's always going to express that way. So that's what I think is so fascinating about going back to tying back to tonal work and chiropractic. That's why I love tonal work so much. And if you look at, I think all of the greats were actually trying to interact with that essence. Because if you talk about what tonal work is, it's not coming
And we
over and
talked about that the other
palpating.
day too.
Yeah, it's not about coming over and palpating muscles and finding the contracticity or not. That's like you're looking at it at the most superficial level, right? You're not just looking at their posture and saying like, oh, look, they're crouched over. That means they're more protected. Okay, maybe. But let's think about this at the third, fourth, fifth level, right? What's going on is that the primary subluxation that's there has not been interacted with, and it has been recognized by the individual that is being affected, right? And
Yeah.
because of that, those are the physical manifestations of that primary subluxation, right?
Yeah.
And unless the nervous system is attuned, right, to the frequency that it should be in order for the subluxation to finally release, for the hopefully the universal force that you're putting into the body is accepted by the person's innate, and that way innate can finally rid itself of that subluxation, of the misalignment in the person's life, unless that's when the actual change happens, right? We don't do anything. We just try and put in the most constructive force possible. Actually, we try to put in a destructive force that is as calculated and scientific as possible in order for body to actually accept that and make it constructive.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's why I love the tonal work so much.
I still I even talked to some of my practice members about that. I said, everything you put in your body is technically destructive. So I don't care if it's water. I don't care if it's a positive affirmation. Everything's destructive. It's like, even if you think it's not. They say, well, wait, no, I filtered out my water through double osmosis and charcoal filter. No, your body has to adapt to it, because it has to adapt and change around it, because it's something new, right? So it's still destructive in nature. It's just that it's much easier to adapt. You've changed it into a position environmentally that's much easier to adapt, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean it's not destructive. It's still destructive in nature.
Yeah.
It's still very much destructive.
Yeah.
There's an interesting thing you talked about disconnection. I'll trail off on this real quick, but there is a time. So as you start to grow through network care, right, you start becoming aware of gateways. So you start becoming aware of the point of reorganizational healing, a point of energy which has been ready to release, right? So I used to be trained by practitioners, and I'd be like, oh no, that's not the spot. It's the other spot. It's over there, right? And I was like, wait a minute. It's like, well, hold back, step back. If I'm truly subluxated, I won't know where it is. I won't know where it is. I'll say, oh, I think it's there. So actually, that's a really good practitioner. If they're going to a place where I feel like it's somewhere else, but it's actually there.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that? Because I shouldn't be aware of it, right? You say, well, this hurts. This is where my problem is at. No. If your brain's disconnected from your body, you won't know where the issue's at. You'll feel pain, yeah, but you don't know where the issue's at. And it's amazing. I did so much time with extremity work, especially through clinic and everything. And it amazed me how often the problem was on the opposite side.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I would go in, and this is when I was like playing with AK. I was like, if I can't do what I want in clinic, then I'll do what they want to the best of my own vision. Right. So I started utilizing AK, right? So when I started utilizing AK, none of the muscles tested weak on the pain side. What? So there's nothing wrong with the pain side. And I would go to the opposite leg or the opposite arm, and what would happen? There's something wrong over there.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a perfect analogy I love for this. And it's very simple. You can explain to somebody really quick. Is the fire and the fire alarm.
Yep.
Simple as that. They say, oh no, the fire alarm is going off. The pain's like, oh my God, my left shoulder. Oh my God, but that's just the fire alarm. The fire's somewhere else. It's going on somewhere else, right? And that's where our chiropractic diagnostics, and I'm trying to move away from the diagnostics, our chiropractic detection, right? I like detection better, because it's detection like the Sherlock Holmes, like I'm a detective. The subluxation detection process, that's where our skill set comes in. And that's why you need somebody who's very qualified in the form of chiropractics to be able to study, because pain is so elusive. And I know you've looked at the research. Pain is like as an indicator, it doesn't tell you
It's
crap. Like
awful. It's the worst kind of indication.
it's the vaguest thing ever. You really can't do. And it's amazing because we're legally required to do a SOAP note where something part of it's subjective. And that subjective is usually pain based. But we got to switch that mentality of moving subjective to, how do you feel like your life's been going? What's your mentality at? Where are you feeling at? Essentially, how have you been changing? Changing that subjective model from a pain-based mentality to something even more. But no, that experience is just like, so we got to get in there and really work on the detection process.
Yeah, I think pain is it's a horrible indicator for what something's going on. It's like I'm going to start using this analogy. If you start having a heart attack, the pain indication for that is your left arm hurting, right? So what are you going to do for your heart attack, which is the actual issue? Are you actually going to go
surgery on the left arm?
You're going to do surgery on the left arm. You're going to start massaging. You're going to start icing your left arm. Yeah, you're going to try and cut off your left arm so you don't have any more pain, and then your heart attack kills you.
No,
right?
We got to do the epidural at the neck to cut off the pain down the arm.
Dull the nerves, right? Dull the nerves. Work out the arm a little bit, and it's going to go away, right? No, that's not the case. You have to go, and so pain is like, and I understand people are in pain, and because of their pain, their perception, their entire lives, their quality of life is decreased. I understand that, but you as the chiropractor have to reveal to them, you have to educate them and tell them, guess what? This pain is here for a reason. What's the reason? And then you go on and you talk about how you're opening up the live channels, how you are letting them express themselves as much as they can because you have detected the subluxation, you corrected it, and they should be living at their most optimal, right? That doesn't mean that they don't need surgery now. That doesn't mean that they don't need the supplement with nutrition or great exercise or rest anymore. And that doesn't mean you shouldn't refer to people that do all those great things. What it does mean is that you have done your job. Now be confident that you have, tell the patient that, and then if they do require those needs, you refer out. That's what you do.
For sure. And that's I really kind of want to put this up in like vinyl in my exam room. There's purpose in pain. Something so simple that it'd just be like,
Dude, I'm gonna make a symptom video. I'm gonna just have a video. Just like if someone ever complains about pain, I just want them to just like, I'm gonna like go watch the video again, and talk about what symptoms actually are and stuff. It's just like, I don't
make sure you understand.
Just talk about that.
If you don't agree with that mentality and understand where we're going, then you probably shouldn't be under my care because you're not going to get what you want. You're not. That's the honest to God thing. And if not, I just need a good MD in the back of my pocket, and I'll send them right there. It's okay if you disagree with our philosophy. That's completely all right. But understand that's what it is, and that's the care you're getting when we're moving forward with care. And I want to make sure people understand. I sometimes would explain it this way. I say, okay, think about it. We're in like the middle of a lake, and it's a giant round lake. And we say, okay, we need to get to land, but we don't talk about which direction to get to land. So we just start paddling, and this person starts paddling that way, and then I start paddling. I'm like, oh wait, no, I need to paddle that way, and then they paddle the opposite way, and then I'm like, well, that way's closer, and they're like, no, I'm pretty sure this way's closed. When we start I say, okay, here's the thing, I want to get on the same page before we start paddling. Let's go this way. Well, I want to go this way. Okay, that's cool. Let's go that way. Type of thing, or whatever that, get on the same page before we start the process. Right. And really that's something that's just, again, it's like, it's sorely missed. It's like sitting down with someone and making sure they understand. This is what you're going to receive from care. This is what you're paying for. And this is the value you're going to get from it. Making sure they understand that. I said, well, can you get rid of my pain? I said, well, my focus isn't necessarily pain. My focus is to get to the cause of the problem and improve your overall life, improve overall health. Will that get rid of your pain? It could go away. It might also stay. Is it going to get better? Yeah, probably.
Mhm.
Yeah, I see most people get better from the previous 100, people I've seen. For the majority, most of them have reduction in pain. Will it go completely away? I'm not sure on that. Not 100%. That's the reality of it. I
Mhm.
don't know, but I know it's going to get better. Why? Because your overall life's going to improve, and when your overall life improves, your overall healing's going to improve, and your overall healing
Mhm.
improves, your pain's going to most likely improve. But my
Yeah.
focus is not going to be the pain because that's the lowest bar. I want to
Yep.
go to the highest bar and work on that. Go to
Mhm.
the top. Right? They say
Yeah.
cut off the head of the snake.
Yeah.
Okay?
Exactly.
Cut off the
There
head of
was
the snake.
a that reminds me of a. I always reference the story just because I love it, but there's a Sigafoos story that he used to tell, where you had a patient that uh, he was just spiritually and mentally, he was just a very negative, awful person.
It's
And
pessimistic.
he came into his office because he was trying to get his knee pain to go away.
Yeah.
And he communicated with him and told him, look, this is what I do. I don't chase pain, but this is what I do. Follow the protocol. And I know that, the life expression within you is going to be better, right? If you follow the protocol. And sure enough, he followed it. And he was a pretty good patient. And then over time, his pain in his knee never went away. But he noticed that over time, however long it took, his expression of life, he completely changed as a father, as a husband.
Yeah.
He turned his life all the way
So
around.
much that the knee pain was like whatever.
Yeah, the knee pain, like, and I think in the end, the man needed like surgery for his knee. But in the end, like, he completely did a 180 in his life and became an extremely devoted husband and father. And like, in the end, like, that's the lesson that he tells people. It's like, I didn't care about the knee. I cared about him and how he's and who he is in life. That's what we do as chiropractors. That's what you do.
Yeah.
If you don't focus on that,
Yeah.
then you can focus on the pain and trying to get people out of pain. There's nothing wrong with that.
But let
Legislature
me
is the
tell
one
you,
that
it's so much more fun when someone's life
it's
changes. It's
way more fun.
amazing.
It's way more
It's
fun seeing
amazing.
it's way more fun seeing like the changes in someone's life, and you were the one that facilitated that, right? You're the one that kind of,
Went
steered his
along with the
innate
process.
in the right way. Yeah, exactly. Like you kind of helped it in that endeavor, and that's what's special. And if you want to do that, that's what we do as chiropractors, should be doing as chiropractors. And if you don't want to do that, that's completely fine. Like, do your own thing. You can chase pain all day and try to get people out of their pain. You're gonna help a lot of people try and get rid of their pain. That's fine. But that's not, in my opinion, that's not what that's not what chiropractic is. Actually,
Yeah.
that's not what
I
chiropractic is. That's not my opinion. That's what
actually heard
chiropractic is.
when we were talking, I don't know if you're still on the call with some of the neophytes. One of them made a mention. I think Alex said it. I thought it was a beautiful analogy. He said that's almost like going to war with a sword and then dropping the sword and running in for a fist fight. He said you're dropping your best weapon. What the heck
Hmm.
are you doing? He's like,
Hmm.
really? Like, that's what it is, And we already know. And now we can use retroductive logic, or I guess that's deductive. I don't know, retroductive or deductive, whatever type of logic it is. Like I talked about before, the intention where your awareness and focus is going to determine what's going to be expressed more. So if you put more focus on disease, you're going to get disease. You put more focus on health, you're going to get more health. So we
Hmm.
already determined the outcome. We already know what the outcome's going to be. And, it doesn't, and it's not difficult. You can go look up the stats. One of the number one killers is iatrogenic. Like, I don't think many people realize that. Like, the number one killers in the US is going to the doctor.
Hmm.
Like, I don't think that processes with a lot of people. Like, holy shit, the person that's supposed to help me and improve my life, when I go to them, I'm more likely to lose my life.
Yeah. Isn't it like
And
the
I
third
know
leading
it's
cause
not
of
all
death?
about mortality in life. I understand that, but like, holy shit, like, wow,
Hmm.
wow,
I
you
always
know,
like to throw out
that's
I always like
hard.
to throw out this stat that in the USA we consume the US alone consumes a third of the opioids in the entire world.
Yeah, you made
But
that post. That was good.
Yeah, but the U.S. it isn't even in the top 10 in first world countries when it comes to overall health. It's like, if think about that, if
It's really
health really
simple.
came from a pill or a potion, we would be the healthiest country 100%, but we're not. We're just not. So that tells me that
Yeah,
that's not where health comes from.
yeah. It's amazing how you can utilize simple logic to come to a very conclusive evidence. Okay, clearly that doesn't work. But yet we're so stuck in the story, we're so stuck in the dogma, we're so stuck in our egos, really. I mean, a lot of it is we're stuck in what we believe in. We have a weird way, like human nature is really weird, because I've done a lot of study into human nature and observation of just how do people react. That's a very peculiar thing. I got the moon right behind me here. um, how do people react, right, to stuff? And so often we get so attached to our first comment, right? Someone says, "Oh, I believe in this," and they say, "Well, that's not true because of X, Y, and Z." And even if you clearly prove it wrong and have the evidence to back it up, and you're like, "Yeah, for sure, this is not correct. Your first statement you made," they will still hold on to that statement just as like a reflex. Like it's just a reflex, like, "Oh no, I have to hold on," because it's a protection of the identity. That's really where it comes from. It's where someone's trying to protect themselves socially and identity wise, and it's very hard of them to let go of something, right? Because, and I always pose this question to my parents, because and I don't want to go down the vaccine route, but I pose this question to them because they're very much in my same mentality. And they say, "I don't understand why somebody would take that. I don't understand why somebody doesn't see the truth of the weirdness, and why would you take something like that when healing comes from within and everything." And they say, flip your perspective, right? Imagine if you were in their shoes. What if someone came to you and I said, "This is going to be a peculiar question, but think about it for a second. What if someone came to you and they actually had the true evidence that vaccines are actually safe and effective, and they actually had the actual evidence to back it up and everything, and that whole thing was set up? How would you respond? How do you think you would respond?" And they said this exact answer I was expecting, which is, "I don't think I would accept it initially." I said, "Well, that's what the person on the other side is
Mhm.
experiencing." So the person that says, "I believe," they in their hearts, they honestly believe that the medical system is going to help them, and they honestly believe that down to the deepest core. And we already know that's unfortunately not true, but that belief is still there, and they hold to that. We were talking a lot about beliefs. They're so stuck on that. So when you go in and challenge that, where they're like, "This is the system I've been using for the last 15 years, and I trust and believe my doctor. I got a good MD, like I got a good PCP, type of thing." And you go in and you say, "Oh no, they're wrong. They don't know what they're talking about." Well, of course they're going to reflexively push back on you. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, no, that's expected, of course. But you have to have the time and presence to say, and it's not that all doctors are bad. That's by no means. It's not that all health is, all this healthcare stuff is bad. I always tell people, I'm like, if I step outside, today and I get torn in half by a truck, you're goddamn right. I want a good surgeon to sew me back together. It's like, God,
Yep.
I'm not going to the chiropractor. Sorry, I'm in two pieces, and there's limitations to matter. That shit ain't coming back unless somebody sews me up. So,
Mhm.
so there's
Mhm.
definitely a place and time, but the dominance within the system and the proportionality needs to also match. It needs to be proportional
Mhm.
to its requirements, right? So the
Yep.
requirements has been grossly misunderstood, and the proportionality has been met grossly inappropriately. So we're in a
Mhm.
90-20 when we should really have, and this sounds weird. I agree with it and disagree with this comment at the same time as I'm stating it, but it's also somewhat of a belief of mine. I believe chiropractor should be your PCP in the
Mhm.
healthcare system. You should go to the chiropractor. They say, "Oh, we're doing your general checkup." They do the general checkup. "You're looking great. Okay, let's get you adjusted. Make sure your nervous system's functioning great. We'll do a check on that. Nervous system's functioning great. We don't need to send you to a specialist for any type of extreme type of care."
Mhm.
What type of world would that be? Oh my God.
It'd be
The
crazy.
health would be so expressed that all the pharmaceutical companies would go out of business, unfortunately. But that's the reason why it hasn't existed yet,
Mhm.
is because all of a sudden we'd be living in a different world where everybody's nervous systems would be expressed. People would be expressing life, would be enjoying life, like it's just literally falling off out of the sky, you know.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's the
And we'd still be there to diagnose and help them, drive them when that medical paradigm is actually necessary. And
mhm.
it's rare, but it is necessary.
Yeah, I think that's interesting too, because I kind of like and dislike that statement for I think for the same
Right?
reasons that
Yeah, it's kind of like mixed.
you said, because like the moment you, but it's really our own fault, because when we say that we want to be PCPs, we immediately think, oh, that means we have to diagnose and be the primary care physician, right? That means we have to
Yeah,
do
exactly.
things
That's the
as the,
problem.
like we need to diagnose, we need to do medical checkups on people. But what if the primary care physician meant coming in and just getting checked for subluxation, right?
Yeah,
And
what if
it's like you
that
said,
was
so
your PCP?
so yeah, so I think in the end, in theory, the saying is good, but because of how the paradigm that we have lived for so long, we've seen it as
Yeah.
negative, that it's already kind of hard to accept that, you know. So
And
it's interesting,
I
because
don't know if that
I
paradigm will
agree
exist.
with that premise overall.
Yeah. Cool. Cool. Yeah, I don't know if that paradigm will ever exist, but it's a cool thought to think about. It really is to kind of it's very stimulating and exciting. And I understand
Uh-huh.
we hold bias in that factor just because we are both chiropractors, of course, and of course that would increase our business like tenfold. But you know, our business is gonna get good anyways, right? You gotta hold that manifestation, that intention, right? Hold the energy there. That that
Exactly.
that'd be something very astronomical and extraordinary and beautiful. And I can't stop smiling just thinking of that idea of, and you
May,
know, and it's funny, and maybe it's not that far off because that was actually my experience. I
may,
actually, and I don't know, I kind of skipped this over when you asked about my personal story, but I actually didn't know that the chiropractor was not a normal physician or a normal physician defined by, you know, is the cultural standards, right? I honest to God thought the chiropractor was a normal physician. They're like, oh, you check your PCP. Like to me, the chiropractor was PCP. Like Walter was my physician I went to, right?
mhm.
And then what's funny is when I got into chiropractic school, then I realized he wasn't even doing a normal chiropractic technique. I'm like, oh, he's not even like a usual chiropractor. Like it was like a double. It was really entertaining discovering that on top of that. But maybe it's not that far off because I actually had that experience. I mean,
Mhm.
my chiropractor was my PCP, you know. So
Yeah,
maybe it's not
far-fetched.
unrealistic.
Hmm.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that's actually what I was gonna uh conclude by saying, that you're probably gonna be like, maybe that should be your maybe that should be like one of your grand goals in life, you know, is
yeah,
to, you know, get that message across, and hopefully make every chiropractor be that person, right? Be the primary care,
mhm,
the primary care chiro, the
yeah,
PCC, you know, the
yeah,
guy that they
yeah.
see first off overall,
Primary. Wait, I
unless,
love that primary care chiro PCC. I love that.
yeah,
We're
because
PCC.
you go, you like get checked, and if there's anything else comes up, like we are integrated, but we're integrated because we're not integrated in the medical paradigm. We want to integrate but collaborate with them, right? And I think,
Yeah,
and actually that's something that I think me and John have talked about before. It's a, I think it's a possibility, you know. I think the more we dive into,
yeah,
like, fully understanding what our philosophy actually is trying to tell us, what it actually is, if we can communicate that actually, and not just be a bunch of idiots that, you know, crap on the medical paradigm all the time, because what they do is beautiful, you know.
yeah.
If there's an emergent situation, everyone's looking for a surgeon,
Bless
or
their heart.
the ER room, exactly. So it's like, but bless their hearts too, they don't know anything about health, right?
Yeah,
So if we can establish that relationship where they're like, hey, you guys are incredible at this stuff, uh
mhm,
keep that, give us help, because we know
Yeah.
what health is. The health is going back to seeing the completeness, the wholeness of the person, right? And we do it through our
Yeah.
own way, you know? Like
Yeah.
we want to work with you. But we want you to understand this is where we're coming from. I think
Yeah.
that's what it actually is. Maybe that's what something you should what you should work on in the future.
Yeah. I'm gonna start using that term. I hope you don't mind. PCC. I'm here to be a PCC, primary
On the
care
PCC,
chiropractor.
baby.
PCC. PC
I love
reminds
that.
me of PSCS. So it sounds
Oh
like.
yeah,
Yeah, it sounds like PSCS. Oh my god.
that's funny. I like
Uh,
that.
yeah. What? Oh, I was curious about what did you talk about down at Lyceum? I didn't even realize you were talking. I was so excited when I saw that post. I was like, it's like freaking Oracle up there rocking it out.
I did my best. Most of the talk,
I'm sad I
actually,
missed that. I apologize.
no, it's all good. It's okay. I mean, you're running a practice. Uh, the premise of the talk was about just being fully in to the duties that it is to be adult, right?
Mm.
Because we've like, and we're talking more fraternity stuff right now, which is really fun.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we have fallen so far off the wagon, and
Yeah.
we used to have so much decadence, right? We had,
Mhm.
and we had like the biggest philosophers, scientists. We created all of the techniques that are out there for the
Yes.
most part,
Yes.
and all the techniques that are out there are derived from what are the delts like alumni have actually created in the past. We were the most savvy and greatest businessmen in chiropractic. What happened to all that, right? So I think like my whole message was about, you know, trying to reconnect to that same fire and spirit, and realizing like everyone needs to step up. Everyone has a job, right? Everyone has their own talents. um, and you may like, maybe you're not the most savvy, you know, scientist or philosopher or even, you know, businessman. um,
Yeah.
I don't care. Step
That's
up,
why we're a
step
group
into
of
a
men.
job. Yeah, maybe you can even step into politics or something else, but
Yeah.
be a leader, you know, step
Yeah.
into the role that you yourself were made to be in. There's a reason you're on this earth in this moment in
Yeah.
time and space, and the reason for that is because you need to express yourself fully with what you were given. So just do it. Just do the thing and see
Yeah.
where it might take you, you know? And it's
Yeah.
gonna be crazy, it's gonna be fearful, and there's a lot of obstacles to overcome. However, that's the beauty of it all. And we need more people. We need more soldiers that are willing to step up and do that. So that was like the premise of my talk, and hopefully it got through to some of those guys.
Hey,
I'm
even if
really
it's one person, that's
Mhm,
impactful.
exactly, and that's my whole thing. Like
I used to
that's
say,
what was that?
yeah. I used to think about tutoring. So when I would tutor, sometimes people would get stuck up in like the next test and everything. So I wouldn't have people show up. And
Uh,
my mantra, I used to like keep me together because I would get aggravated. I put all this work into tutoring and teaching,
mm,
and I would get aggravated that people weren't up. I switched to the mindset of as long as there's one person that shows up, I'm happy.
mhm. Yep,
That's all I need. One person. The same thing with practice. As long as
yep.
there's one person's life I can change, I'm happy.
Mhm,
And I know I've already done that, so I'm happy, man. But
yep.
go on with what you're saying.
Yeah, no, exactly. It matters to them, right? It matters to that one person what you did. So
Yeah.
I think that a lot of people, I think they start to really, the moment they start to become more awake and uh more in tune with the life that they were given, is when they start to realize I'm here for a purpose, and they start to exact that purpose. And not only that, they start to share that purpose with the other people around them and change other people's lives, you know? So I think that's what that that that's the kind of that's the message I was trying to get across. So hopefully I did a good job.
Yeah, no, it
uh,
sounds amazing. And it's yeah, you're amazing, Oracle. Don't even. Don't even doubt yourself for a second ever. Please
Thank you,
don't.
man. You,
Yeah,
I look up to you in a lot of ways as well, man.
no. Don't say that because I look up to
It's
you.
true.
The only work it works one way. No, I look up to you. Okay. Don't try to put me above you. Okay.
No, no, no. There's a it's a two-way street, man. It's a two-way street.
Yeah, for sure. I yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's that's extraordinary. And I look at Delta Sigma Chi. I had somebody ask me one time, "What's Delta Sigma Chi to you?" And it was somebody who was outside of the fraternity. And you know what I said? I said, I realize these men are the best of the best. And I get
100%.
to not only I was invited as a colleague, which I find as the highest respect and honor. I said, even if I wasn't accepted by them, I was so honored to just get an invitation. I was like, holy shit. I was like, these are literally the best of the best in my career path that I've
Yep.
chosen. Like, holy shit.
Hmm.
And we hold that standard. We're
Mhm.
going to hold that standard. If it's not at that standard right now, we're going to hold that standard, period. I have no doubt about that.
Yeah, we're going through everything's an expansion and a contraction. So I think we're
Yes.
right now at the pinnacle of starting, in my opinion, the second greatest expansion of Delta Sigma Chi. The first one started in the early 20s. I think we're on the precipice of doing it all over again 100 years later.
Yeah,
And
the early 20s.
yeah, and honestly,
the repeat,
I hope
baby.
exactly, and I hope people are prepared for that, because I think a lot of people, they don't understand, they can't even comprehend that we are about to ascend into that state. So
Yeah.
I just hope people are ready.
the second coming of Delta Sigma Chi.
Exactly, the second coming. Exactly.
The second coming of Delta Sigma Chi. And it's like I feel. Do you mind if I get a little woo wooey right
Go for
here?
it. Go for
Okay,
it.
cool. Let's have a little fun. From an energetic perspective, what I feel not only in the world, but also what I'm visually noticing is just this heightened awareness. And I don't like to use the term in increasing the consciousness because everybody uses that term a lot, but that is true. That is what it is. But I'm seeing people starting to shift their mindset of kind of the now what type of perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we have so much information available to us. We're way past that information age, right? I could pick up anything on Google. You want to learn something? You want to know how many gallons of water in the Nile River? I can look it up right now. Like, it's crazy. If you want to learn how to run a business, we could pull up a book and get 15 reviews and people in the different world who got specific opinion on these books and what book I should look up. And there's so much available to us right now. And all our cultures are mixed too, which is what's interesting from globalization, right? So what culture are you? Right? And we're in such a weird phase where everything is just occurring all at the same time, right? And so, like you said, contraction, expansion. We're in a phase right now where everything is just coalesced, right? It's just this giant amalgamation and the soup of everything going on. So when you ask, well, who are you? What do you do? What do you stand for? There's so many things someone can pick from that people are starting to ask the question, now what?
I like that.
What's next? And so now we see this aggressive introspection. So if you look at the process of Satori, which is from more, I think it's Buddhist. I think Buddhist. It's either Zen Buddhism or Buddhism, but the process of aggressive kind of cycling on the self of moving towards enlightenment, right? So what happens is you're going through the introspective process. So you're basically told as a student, you're like, well, it's what you have to do to achieve enlightenment is you have to achieve it spontaneously. And so, what the student does, right? They sit up there and say, okay, I'm going to focus to be spontaneous. I'm going to try to be spontaneous. They're like, wait, that's not spontaneous because you're trying to be spontaneous. Okay, I'll spontaneously not be spontaneous. Well, shit, fuck, we're in the same spot. So what happens is the cycle of it starts folding on itself and I'll tell you the secret to getting out of it. You just step out of it.
Yep.
That's it. You just step out of it. You stop the process. You realize this is just occurring. This thing is just occurring. You just step out of it and you let it be. But you know where we're at right now is we're in that introspective process where we're looking at ourselves, right? Think of something as simple in, like I said before, Rick and Morty. Is that an introspective show? Hell yeah. They're making jokes about them making jokes about themselves. Think of Deadpool. Look at Deadpool. It's all fourth wall breaks. Look at our comedy nowadays. It's all about breaking the fourth wall. And what is breaking the fourth wall? Realization and self-awareness of the self. Right? So we're going through that process as a society right now, and we're seeing the society is really an average of how everybody is. There's people that are way past that stage. There's people that are barely getting to that stage, right? The bell curve. And then there's the majority of the society is in that process of really, really heightened self-awareness right now. And a lot of people are like, what do I do about this? You know? And so you start getting obsession over the mind and the thought, which starts producing heavy amounts of depression or anxiety. Whether your past or future will determine which one it is, right? And even Lao-Tzu even stated that, 3000 BCE or wherever his time frame was, you know. So we're seeing increased rates of that, and you can claim that for other reasons, for COVID, blah 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 blah. It's all, that's the cause of why there's increased rates of that. But I think we're really going through, like you said, that depression expansion phase, kind of like the birth process, right? We're having a new rebirth process. We're going through a compression phase of the contractions, and then relaxation, and then contraction and relaxation, type of thing. And we're definitely experiencing the contraction phase right now. So it's exciting to see what we're on the cusp of something that's beautiful is going to come out, and it's exciting to be on the edge of that, and we're going to take part in that. I have a feeling this is our last component right here, but I wanted to state my mantra for my business: limitless chiropractic. It's no more limits.
No more limits. I love that.
There's no more limits.
I love that.
Let it all at the door. We're done.
I love that. Yeah. So, you stated it perfectly. I don't think there's anything more we need to add. I think it would.
Yeah.
I think it would ruin it.
Yeah. We have your good talk and your beautiful hair. We're all good to go, baby.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I'm really proud of you. Let's keep it going. That's the only way to go. All right, brother. Well, I'll let you go so you can do your thing. But this has been awesome. I really appreciate that. Yeah. You took the time to talk to me.
I appreciate you. Yeah, no,
all right, man.
It's always a pleasure. I got so excited when you said, hey, let's have a talk. I was like, yeah, we'll do.
I love it. All right.
All right.
I am going
love you so much, brother.
Love you too, brother.